Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of Two Point Sports. Today, we're changing it up a little bit. It's obviously the bye week, so for today's video, we're going to do a state of the Sooners in grading each position group on the offensive side of the ball today. Second video later this week, we'll be doing the same for the defensive side of the ball. This is, you know, our perspective on this, which I think is going to be fun to do, both for us recording this and then hopefully for you guys watching. You guys, I'm sure, will disagree. Maybe some of you will agree. That's what the comment section's there for. Go down there. Let us know what you think as we go through this video of each position group, what grade you would give them, and some bright spots if you want, or if you're a doomsday kind of fan, which is okay. We have those moments too. Tell us your thoughts too, because we do. I think it's fun to have those kind of disagreements for sports. That's what they're there for us as fans. Before we get any further, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you know when we drop a new video, and follow us on all social media. Linked in the description down below. All right, so let's get started. Grading each position group offense today. Let's start with quarterback. Probably the most important and also the most volatile position for the Sooners this year. Brandon, I'm going to let you start. You give your grade on the quarterback room so far through the first 5 games of this season.
For the first five, I think I'll throw out a C minus, and that's I think trying to be a little generous here. Jackson the first game against Temple, I think he looked fine. It's Temple. He didn't have to do too much. He wasn't. There was never a situation in that game in which we were in any sort of danger or trouble where he would have to make plays or anything. That was a 51-3 game. I think he only had 8 incompletions on the night. Only passed like 140 yards, but we've been told by Jackson himself in the press conference and or watching the press conference. We've not been told, but we've heard through Jackson Arnold, through Seth Luttrell after that game that they intentionally didn't open anything up, so we were all fine with it. But that Temple game, I think he gets a B or whatever. I don't think you can give him an A. But you can't really go below a B. He did exactly what he needed to do or whatever. He wasn't asked to do much. He had 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions. I think he was fine. Houston, he was not great. He had 2 touchdown passes, threw a pick. I think both touchdowns were very short, though. One, I know Brennan Thompson was set up on the muff punt. And then he threw a short one to Jake Roberts later in the game for his 2 touchdown passes. But the offense as a whole in that game just was, I think, and I'll stand on it. We were at that game, or I was at that game, and I've been to a lot of games at that stadium in Norman, and I think that was the worst I've ever watched an OU offense. That was miserable. I think because of the 2 touchdown passes, I might go D minus on that one, and that's just trying not to give them an F here. But I think the offense as a whole was pretty close to an F in that Houston game. I think first half Jackson Arnold against Tulane was really good. He's the guy that I think that we really thought we were going to get all season. He was decisive. I thought he was making the right reads. He really beat Tulane a lot with his feet. Had a lot of good things going in the first half. We were up 21-0 against a really good Tulane team. I think they scored on their three of the first 5 drives in the first half. There were scoring drives. They should have got a field goal drive, but they took a stupid delay penalty there in the first half. I think, that first half offense, and specifically Jackson Arnold, I think if we're going to quarterback grades, was really solid in that first half of Tulane. And then, the second half came around. I think he made a fantastic play to seal it on that 3rd and 11 play where he scored a touchdown that kind of put the game on a reach against Tulane. That was fantastic. He tried to do too much on that pick 6 that kind of put Tulane back in the game. But, overall, I don't think he was bad. He had one really bad mistake in that Tulane game that kind of put him back in it. But, maybe a C, a flat C, no C minus, no C, whatever, just a flat old C there. Then you go to Tennessee, and he's the reason you lost that game. I hate to say it. I think he's a good kid. I think he's going to be really good. I still think he's going to have a great college career, but that Tennessee game, it's an F minus. Like, that's the only thing you can do. He's very indecisive in that game. He threw a bonehead pick after having what seemed like a really long time in the pocket there. He gave the ball back to Tennessee twice after Oklahoma got turnovers in plus territory. That was the worst game he's ever played. I felt bad for him. It sucked. F minus there. And then, Hawk comes in and I think looked solid in that first game, right? He threw a nice ball to J.J. Hester with the game on the line. He had that nice rushing touchdown. He didn't make any mistakes, didn't really do anything spectacular outside of the long touchdown run and 2-point play. But, he was fine. I think, C plus, B minus. Overall, I think through the first 5 games for the whole quarterback room, I don't know what the average and all that stuff is. You got what is a B, a D minus, a C, an F minus, and then a C plus, B minus. I don't know, or maybe a C minus or something for the first 5 games for that quarterback room.
Yeah, I would say for the first 5 games, I'm going to go with the C. And honestly, that's really all due to Hawkins and his performances over the first, the full game that he's had against Auburn at Auburn. I think that it might not be like the stats aren't going to pop off the sheet, but he made one, for the most part, the right plays, and two, he seemed to be very aware. Uh, like if you're gonna, create a player, if for anyone that plays video games or played video games when they were younger, there's that awareness thing where we probably all at some point thought, what the hell is this for? Why do we care about awareness? But that in real life, like that is very important. And he obviously has a very high level of awareness there. For a young quarterback and for any level of quarterback, knowing that your offensive line hasn't been great, which we'll get to that group and grading him in a little bit, he understands what he needs to do and was relatively mistake free. He definitely hasn't had any situations where he's turned the ball over, obviously. So C as a whole, I would give a B minus to Hawk, just because I still think there's some developing there for him as a quarterback. We finally saw some plays get thrown down the field. I think when Jackson Ronald was in, I would personally give him like a D, maybe a D plus, because he did have those moments of good, but he also had those moments of really bad. So it's hard to really maybe be fair, because I think the play calling, which again we'll get to in grading that later in the video, was also suspect when he was the quarterback versus when Michael Hawkins has been under center. And for anyone that disagrees with that, I think maybe I would suggest to go back and just try to rewatch one game. One of the games that Jackson Arnold was the full-time starter for Oklahoma, and then watch the Auburn game. I think it is a stark difference between how Luttrell was calling the game. A lot of RPOs for Jackson Arnold, which for a first-year starter, regardless of how talented it is, you're relying on him to process a lot really, really fast. And even when Dillon Gabriel was here, his first year as a quarterback, a lot of mistakes were happening. He fumbled the ball a lot. He made bad reads. The offense there would be times where it was basically non-existent. And I remember talking about this with Brum, when Dillon Gabriel's first year, because that's when Brandon was on leave. There were times where the offense would explode for a quarter, and then it'd be non-existent for the next 2.5 quarters, and they would have to try to do something with just such a little bit amount of time, and that's what Oklahoma came up short so many times. Year 1 of Dillon Gabriel and Jeff Lebby and Brent Venables. Year 2, you saw that improve a ton. And I think that's what is going to end up happening for Jackson Arnold, because I do agree with you, Brandon. He has the raw talent. He needs someone that can help him develop and process all of that information much faster. If his offensive coordinator is going to stick to the RPO game with him at the helm. I think if you give the Michael Hawkins play calling to Jackson Arnold, I think he would do better. I'm not going to go as far as to say he would be as good as Hawkins, because Hawkins has looked and proven to be very good. Well, Jackson hasn't really shown that on the field this season. But it's just, to me, it's a lot simpler of an offense where the quarterback doesn't have to process nearly as much pre-snap or right as he snaps the ball. Because with the RPO game, you have to see, you got to read the end, you got to read the linebacker, and that by the time he finishes, he clicks and what's happening, he might not have handed the ball off. Like we heard Brent Venables say a lot, like this was an obvious play where you hand the ball off. That's hindsight's 2020. And he's saying it from a coach's perspective, not as the player, where you're having to look at everything, right? So it might be unfair to Jackson, but that's just how his performances have been. I would say D plus. and then B minus for Hawk. We'll see how it goes. I think it seems like Hawkins is the quarterback moving forward. Hopefully, things keep progressing throughout the season. But through 5 games, I would give the quarterback room as a whole a C, even just very average right now. Hopefully, it can get better. Um, let's move on to the offensive line. Um, again, another very volatile position group. A lot of rotation there this season so far through 5 games. Brandon, what's your grade for the offensive line as a whole?
That one's tough. I mean, I'd probably go C minus, D plus. You're right. And I think the silver lining there is I do firmly believe they played their best game of the season on Saturday against Auburn. It wasn't perfect by any means, but I thought, for the first time we actually had moments where our quarterback wasn't running for his life the whole time, where we actually had a pocket. I mean, that pocket for the ball to JJ Hester was perfect. If you look back on that replay or watch that play again, Hawk has all day to stand in there and deliver that throw, and the result is what it was. A perfectly thrown deep ball to JJ Hester that puts Oklahoma back in the game. I thought it was really cool to see some signs of improvement there. And to their credit, they've been a very, very beat up room. I think they're finally getting to where they're going to have their 5. I think the 5 we saw against Auburn is going to be the 5 moving forward. Barring more injuries and stuff. But I think you found your 5 there. I think Hickman and Taylor have played well since coming back. I think they're a bright spot. I think they're still dealing with a little bit of injuries, but I think they are definitely the bright spot of that offensive line so far. And then again, I think they finally figured something out. But if you look at, I think a 6-quarter stretch, really, second half of Tulane and the entirety of that Tennessee game, horrible. 21-0 against Tulane in the first half. And I mean, you're clicking, you're moving the ball. You scored 3 first-half touchdowns. Should have got a field goal. Jackson Arnold's running wild. I really thought it was really solid. I thought it was like, holy shit, I'll be back. Here it is. And then, the second half, Tulane realized that we're not doing anything deep. There's no explosive plays in this offense right now. And then they really just pinned their ears back and sent the house at Arnold there. And, he was in a constant state of pressure. I felt like every snap. And they, for the majority of the second half, we were just punting, just punt. And then obviously with the game on the line, the defense gets a pick. Jackson Arnold runs a touchdown, and the rest is history. But I think the second half of that Tulane game, leading into Tennessee, just horrible. Whether it was Arnold or Hawkins in that Tennessee game, they were running for their life. They were in a. It was bad. And Hawkins was able to do some stuff with it. Unfortunately for Arnold, he wasn't. I still think he cost that game, but he had no help from the offensive line there. That was the worst offensive line performance, I think, in a long time in Oklahoma here. And granted, that Tennessee front is really good. It might be the best front that we'll see all season, but you can't be that bad. I think they had a 6-quarter stretch, second half of Tulane, the entirety of the Tennessee game, where I thought they were just terrible. And I think, because of that, they looked okay against Auburn. Temple's templed. Houston, I don't know. I think the whole team was bad again. I think, it's been a rough go for them so far this season. Luckily you're 4-1, and I do think they played their best game their best game of the season on Saturday. So that is a silver lining, but I think overall it's a D plus, C minus maybe if you want to be generous.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a D. I think they have been terrible. I do agree, though. The Auburn game was definitely their best game through the first 5, but you can even say a D with an asterisk because there's also something that you do have to take into account. There was injuries that have now proven to be very significant. Spencer Brown just was not very good in the playing time he got. I think Joshua Bates was good, but Branson Hickman's definitely the guy that you got to rely on right now as your starting center. Tarquin got moved around a little bit to start the season. Looks like he does make good plays. He makes some boneheaded mistakes, but you can't expect these guys to be perfect. They play like 60-something snaps, and we're just going to remember the one time they allowed a sack or the one tackle for loss they got absolutely blown up on, but they probably had other really good snaps throughout the game. So that's probably to be in fairness to Tarquin, I think he's actually been decent. Not as terrible as I thought maybe a couple weeks ago. And then Sexton, when he's played, he's looked pretty good. I still think he should be the left tackle, but obviously that's me as an outsider. I'm not Coach B. He's the one that sees them every day of practice. But just Sexton seemed to have been really good at tackle, or at least pretty good at tackle in his earlier years pre-injury. We'll see if at some point that needs to be changed, but there were. I still believe that regardless of injury, you knew who was injured, and the players or the coaches, whoever you want to put the fault on, did not prepare themselves to play on Saturday for multiple games or multiple stretches of games. Tulane was a great example. They played a good first half, terrible second half. Like you can't do that. You have the momentum and then you just let them back in the game. And it's not completely on them, but they definitely didn't help the situation because the run game still can get moving. Another thing that Oklahoma hasn't been able to really start with this offense this year is a run game, and to an extent that is the responsibility of an offensive line as well. You got to open some holes. Sometimes the running back doesn't take it. Understood. But if you don't open holes consistently, the running back also can't figure out what the hell to do sometimes. So consistency just isn't there. I don't know. I think once we get further into the season, hopefully they improve, but we're also playing a different type of football now that we are in the SEC. I think while I do think that sometimes this SEC hype is a little overblown by traditional SEC teams because they are kind of riding on the backs of Alabama and Georgia and the occasional LSU when they're really good, they are still much bigger human beings than Oklahoma's used to in the Big 12 for the most part. They are just bigger and heavier. And if you can't contain and I do agree that Tennessee probably is one of the better fronts we'll play this year, but South Carolina has a good front four, and they're going to take advantage of you. Their true freshman Dylan Stewart through the first few games was killing it. He was tied for lead in sacks at some point earlier in the year. He might still be up there. I've been paying too much attention to him recently, but that defensive line is good. The Alabama defensive line, very good. It's Alabama still. I know it's not Nick Saban, so it might not strike that same level of intensity, fear, whatever word you want to use. They showed this last weekend. They are still Alabama under Kalen DeBoer. So you can't be coming in unprepared or play streaky and only have two good quarters and two bad, because a team that is good is going to take advantage of those two bad quarters, and they're not going to let you back in the game when you play the two good quarters, regardless of when that happens. So throughout 5 games, I say all that to say, through 5 games, this offensive line has been a D, not even a D plus, D, maybe even D minus at times with their play through 5 games. Who knows? And you guys can tell us. Maybe some of you think they're a little bit better than we do. That just our opinions on that. I think maybe Brandon was a little generous from my perspective.
I mean, I wasn't super nice on him, but I did give him a D plus, and I think mainly because I didn't completely hate what I saw on Saturday. You know, I mean, for the first 4 games,
That's fair.
I felt like I completely hated it for most of the game. I mean, with the exception of the first half of Tulane. You know, it was just really bad. It felt like that Tennessee game, especially, that was just awful. Yeah, I didn't hate how they played on Saturday against Auburn.
Definitely. That's fair. I think that's fair. And maybe a more positive outlook is like they look that as long as they stay healthy, they could play like a C plus B minus kind of offensive line, maybe even slightly better. But through 5 games, they haven't shown that completely. Well, hopefully things can turn around and keep improving after this bye week. Moving on to, let's go with the tight ends, since they're right there along the line sometimes. I'm going to start with this one. I think the tight ends have actually played pretty well this year. Bauer Sharp has been a good pass catcher. Jake Roberts has come in and played well. I think he blocks well. He had a boneheaded mistake in the Auburn game. Agree or disagree, at the end of the day, it was called an OPI.
You knew I was coming there.
Yeah, I mean, I figured you were going to bring it up. But I think they've played like almost B plus. They've probably been the highlight of this offense so far. They're consistent. They make plays when the ball's in their hands. And if anything, they might be the only reason why Oklahoma's been able to generate some sort of run game to the outside, because they can block a little bit. So That's my take on the tight ends. Maybe others disagree, but I think they've played pretty well.
No, I mean I do agree. I think they've been a bright spot in a relatively not even relatively in a disappointing offensive start to the season so far. I think they've kind of showed up week in, week out, done what they've been tasked to do. There's nothing spectacular, nothing blowing you away, but they're not making mistakes, and they're very reliable so far through 5 games. They've got about 230 yards combined right now, 2 touchdowns between the two of them. I think Bauer Sharp got absolutely hosed on that offensive pass interference call. I think that was a little bit of home cooking. That was a great play from the Oklahoma offense, and they kind of just wiped away for no reason. But Bauer Sharp, I think, made a couple plays in that Auburn game. That one that I think should have counted. He caught that little floater where Hawkins leaked out to kind of get a drive going there. Yeah, I think they've been fine too. I mean, I think B is fine for me. Yeah, I think you want B plus. I'll just go with just a good old regular B. But yeah, I think they've been a bright spot.
Sorry, I had to mute myself there for a second. Um, yeah, hopefully they keep improving as the offense keeps hopefully getting better through the next few games. Because again, I think we both agree they've been the best part of this offensive unit so far. And then let's go running backs. Um, we'll say wide receivers for last as a position group. Running backs, Brandon, I'll let you take this one first. I still got to think through my grade here because I think that this one's a little hard for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think a lot of this falls on. I mean, they're running behind an offensive line that's not been very good this season. I mean, I was the highest grader on the offensive line, and I went D plus. So that kind of shows that they're not. They're not playing great so far. Obviously Gavin Sawchuk, for whatever reason, the philosophy I have is his running style does not bode well with what the offensive line is allowing right now. Gavin Sawchuk didn't just all of a sudden start to suck at football. That's not how this works. He really came on last season. He had a little bit more time. He could do his patient style of approach last year, and it worked for him. Doesn't work this year, so I think unfortunately he's going to be a guy that's kind of a third option going forward. Javante Barnes at times has looked good. I think that Auburn game towards the end of the game when it was time to put the game out of reach, I think the offensive line actually created a pretty damn good hole, and he missed it. And obviously that a hole big enough where I think he could have got a first down at the end of the game. It didn't work out that way. Luckily, Schmidt at the field goal, we won the game, whatever. But he's been okay. He had a nice run against Tennessee. He had 60-something yards against Auburn here, 3.5 yards a carry. He's been okay. Maybe it's C minus. Taylor Tatum's been your bright spot, right? I mean, he came in that Tulane game, really looked like he's going to be a player. He started the game against Tennessee, which I think was telling. I think he really, after that Tulane game, earned himself that running back one spot. Unfortunately, he went out, so we didn't get to see him play against Auburn. But yet, I think Taylor Tatum is your bright spot. He's a guy that can kind of do it all. He's showing that even though he's a freshman, just like Hawkins, the moment's not too big for him either. He's there making plays. He's getting shit done. Hopefully, getting back for Texas. I think the duo that we have going forward with Tatum and Barnes could be pretty good. Again, I think being a running back is you rely on so many people around you in order to be successful. Whether that's your quarterback, making the right read on a read option, whether that is your offensive line creating holes, and then sometimes you just got to make plays. All right, because it doesn't work all every time, but it hasn't been bad. It hasn't been great. I think a C is fine for the running back so far, with Taylor Tatum being your bright spot, a guy that I think is playing at a B plus level.
So I really want to say B minus, but I feel like the reality is, and it might still be generous, is like C plus. And then the reason I'm going there and I'm between those two grades is because of what you mentioned and what I mentioned earlier. This offensive line just has not done them any favors, and as you mentioned, like being a running back, you can be Saquon Barkley, Emmett Smith, Adrian Peterson. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but you need an offensive line that can block for you if you're going to put up any significant stats and be productive as a running back. At least that's what typically you see, unless it's just someone that can bulldoze over everyone and get like 5-6 yards regardless of how much contact they get. You don't normally see that in college, and I don't think these guys on this roster are that. Um, so that's why I want to give them a little bit of grace. I think when they do make plays, it it's impressive because this offensive line doesn't do much to help them in that regard. More often than not, Taylor Tatum's definitely a guy where it's hard to not give him like a B plus as an individual, maybe even an A minus in the limited snaps he's had so far. Because I mean, he's had multiple long runs. I think the only running back that's had any explosive runs. Javante Barnes is good, and Gavin Sawchuk. We haven't really brought it up, but he had a good run in the Auburn game. I don't know if you remember it, but it got Oklahoma a first down, if I remember correctly.
They called it back though.
He did. They did call it back. That was not on him, but he had a
No,
good run.
and again, I think that was a fake call too. I mean, you and I were texting during that Auburn game. I was pretty livid throughout the contest. I thought a lot of that shit was pretty ticky tacky in calls that I don't think they're going to call the other way. But yeah, no, I agree. He had a nice run against Auburn there. I don't think it should have been called back.
I mean, that's a different discussion, but I think Gavin Sawchuk could definitely come in and bring some value, especially when, I mean, we've seen this year they do a lot of two running back sets out there, and maybe he's a guy where you need some speed, and he's probably still the fastest running back on this team. I know Taylor Tatum's shown speed on his plays, but Gavin Sawchuk's got the breakaway speed that Taylor Tatum and Javante don't quite have. Yeah, I'm gonna. You know what? I think I've talked myself. I'm going B minus just because
Oh yeah.
they've done well in the opportunities they've had, and I think for the most part, if the offensive line can just be a slight bit better, be like C plus territory, which still isn't great, but like you have time as a quarterback, and they'll create holes for the running back. I think the running backs go from averaging like 3 yards a carry, which I think is roughly where they're at right now as a unit, to maybe bumping that up to 5, 4.5, which doesn't sound like a big jump, but like when you think about it over a period of a game, that could be a difference between like 60, 70 yards as a unit and 120 with how many times we can run this ball. And Mike Hawkins is going to help the run game too. So as teams prepare for Mike using his legs, these running backs will get more opportunities too, and times will run where it's a run play because the offense is so worried about a play action or a scramble from Hawkins that they're gonna load the box the wrong way or commit to Mike even though it's going the opposite direction. So we'll see how it progresses. I'm gonna go B minus just because there hasn't been much help there for the running back so far, and they've made some good plays. Okay, last group, but not the last people we're gonna grade here. Wide receivers this season. Brandon, where would you grade this wide receiver room so far?
Yeah, Deion Burks B plus A minus. He's a guy that has been consistent week in week out when he's out there. He obviously missed the Auburn game and the majority of the second half against Tennessee. But he's been a guy that's always been reliable. Unfortunately, because of the offensive line, because of the play design, whatever whatever the reason might be, we haven't really seen him get a chance to open it up yet. And hopefully going forward, that will be the case. Hopefully they put a little more trust in Hawk and then the offensive line play, and the play calling is a little different, and we kind of get to see these guys stretch it. I thought J.J. Hester was very good against Auburn. Obviously, the him getting open deep was fantastic there. It changed the game, really. Obviously, the Kip Lewis play is the play that's always remembered, and rightfully so. Kip Lewis made a hell of a play there. But, without J.J. Hester just beating the shit out of that DB, just one-on-one, just run right by him, and Hawk throwing a great ball, none of that's possible. That play really set up the first of two touchdowns in the second half, or in the fourth quarter, and again, you can't win without both of them, and I think Hester made that play possible. Even on that play where he was like a 2nd and 20, I think, and Hawkins kind of scrambled out and hit him, and he made a athletic play, man, a nice spin move, put a hand on the ground, picked up a first down. I thought Hester, by far played his best game as a Sooner on Saturday against Auburn, but really showed signs of life, which is good because, with Jaden Gibson gone for the season, he's a guy that you hope can take over and play that Gibson role. He's a big body dude too, man. He's 6'4" something. He kind of gives you what no other receiver on this team, absent Jaden Gibson, he's obviously done for the season. He gives you that size that no other receiver on this team can do. So hopefully he continues to play at that level. Jaquez, really thought he'd be more involved in that Auburn game. I think we both did. I think we both had him as like our offensive, player of the week to look for something. A guy that, he looked really good in that Tennessee second half. Him and Hawk seemed to have some sort of rapport there. Didn't pan out. So outside of the Tennessee game, he's been kind of limited. I do think Jackson Arnold missed him on a deep touchdown in that Tulane game. Brennan Thompson, hit and miss. I think he played a solid game against Auburn. He obviously scored in the Houston game, but he's not been, there's nothing that really jumps off the page at you so far for Brennan Thompson. It's okay. Farouk sucks, but he got hurt. That's the receiver room is hard to grade right now, just because it's been so beat up all season, especially that Auburn game. You're playing without your first 5 receivers. Hopefully, we get to see Jacoby Johnson at receiver. It's just Deion Burks has been good. Everybody else has been very hit and miss, I think, that's just the reality of the situation there. So I think you're hard to give him a grade better than a C minus, just because it's been so inconsistent. You've got one guy who's consistent, a couple of guys showing flashes. Obviously, Jaquez Petto in the Tennessee game. I thought Hester against Auburn was another guy who flashed. We need them to be more consistent, and then I think you can bump that grade up. But right now, through 5 games, Burks has been the only one who's been consistent.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go C plus, and maybe I'm being too generous, but I think they haven't really gotten opportunities with Jackson Arnold as a quarterback. There's definitely times where it wasn't on him. They would drop the wide receivers would drop balls when he would hit him in the hands, but he would also hit him late. Sometimes I do agree this it's hard to grade him because of the inconsistencies also at to what they have to rely on to play a good game. They're blocking pretty well. It sounds kind of weird to say that for wide receivers, but they do block decently well, especially Raggins. There was a play, I don't remember in what game, but basically every wide receiver was running a curl route, and Jackson hit, I believe it was Deion Burks for the first down. Tulane. And Zion Raggins perfectly boxed out the DB that was on him, because the DB made the read correctly. He was going to come in and get a perfectly timed pass breakup, maybe even a pick on the play. But Raggins was right there to box him out, didn't let him get it anywhere near Deion. Deion caught the ball and got the first down. I think that's something that gets overlooked because it's not on the stat sheet. But for someone that's especially that small, I think he's the smallest wide receiver on this team. He plays big. I will C plus is my cap with him, just again because there is still inconsistencies. I think they can play better, but there's so much that they rely on to do good and put up any sort of statistics for themselves. Like Jackson Arnold seemingly only looked at Deion Burks or Bauer Sharp. Now that Mike Hawkins has come in, he had some rapport with Jaquez, and hopefully they give Jaquez more opportunities with Mike as the quarterback. Deion Burks has definitely been the best receiver. Brennan Thompson, I agree with you, hit or miss. He can have his really good moments. He can have his not so good moments. But I think that now that they have a quarterback that maybe they can put a little bit more trust in to get them the ball on time, they're going to play better. Maybe I'm not going to say that Mike Hawkins is going to throw for 300 yards and run for 70. He's not going to be Kyler Murray all the way. The season that Kyler won the Heisman. But he might be like someone that could be Kyler Murray like and uses his legs, which opens up the opportunities for the wide receivers because he's looking at the field. That's one thing that we've talked about throughout the season so far, and Brent Venables mentioned it too. Each defense has kind of just played within 10 yards, and they'll play man to man on the wide receivers because they don't really think that our quarterback's going to take a shot down the field. And look what he did against Auburn in crunch time. He took a shot down the field. He trusted himself, and that's the one that we all remember. But he actually did take some shots down the field. They were incomplete passes, but
He missed Brennan Thompson, I think, which should have been a touchdown. I mean, that was his one
yeah,
miss. But yeah, I agree. It was cool to see shots downfield.
yeah, like all you got to do is take the shot. You don't have to complete every single ball. Obviously, we love for it to be completed every single time. But realistically, if you just show that the threat is there, the defense has to spread out a little bit more. And that wasn't happening under Jackson Arnold, unfortunately. Under Mike Hawkins, it seems to be happening more, and hopefully it happens more and more and more as we get throughout the season to create more of those explosive plays. But I think the wide receivers are going to be better than they've looked so far. So that's why I'm going C plus. They just haven't had what they need to be successful, and I think that they can be much better than they have been through 5 games.
And hopefully it comes back a little bit healthier going forward. Hopefully we get some for that Texas game.
I would say if any wide receiver room, if any coach on this staff has an excuse for injuries, it's Emmett Jones. And even still, like with the injuries that he's had to work through, he's preparing these guys to play pretty well on Saturdays. So, I mean, being out your first 5 guys on your first true road game in the SEC, and you still produce with what you have talent wise, I think you're doing pretty well. Once you hopefully you do get healthy, like you said, and the offense should look much better in the passing game. All right, last group to grade before we wrap up this video: offensive play calling. Seth Luttrell, JoJo
Bad.
Finley. All right, how bad? What's the grade on it?
I don't know. It's.
Are you going F?
Tennessee F minus, right? I think he's right there with Jackson Arnold as an F minus in that Tennessee game. I don't even think he was great against Temple. Obviously that's such a game where it's so hard to grade anybody in that Temple game because it's Temple. You don't really have to try. But Houston, I think that's borderline. I mean, that's an F too. Tulane first half really good, right? I think that's a B maybe. Thought he was better against Auburn. Put a little more trust in the guys, I think, and you have to. I think again, you have to take into consideration how beat up the team's been, and that's something that you can't ever foreshadow. You can't ever anticipate, but it's something that you have to, I think, better adjust for. And I don't think he's necessarily as a play caller adjusted to the personnel we have available. I think he's been bad. D minus, F plus. If F plus is not a thing. I realize that once you're an F, it's an F. But I like to throw out F minuses and F pluses. Maybe an F plus, D minus. I think a lot of Sooner fans aren't huge Seth Luttrell guys right now.
Yeah, and that's fair. I'm gonna go D, and that still might be a little bit high. I've been generous in the last couple of groups. The only reason I'm gonna go with a D here is because he has looked better with Mike Hawkins, and maybe Hawkins is doing more of making him look better. But the offense has looked better, just objectively, with Mike Hawkins as his quarterback.
No doubt.
Again, I think it goes back to how it looks like we have 2 different play callers between the quarterbacks. It's not the same offense with Jackson as it is under Hawkins. And some people may disagree, but I still think that the RPO game, what he was asking Jackson to do was unrealistic. And Jackson also just could not execute. And if the rumors are true that's something that he wanted to run, whatever. But he, as a play caller, needs to make that adjustment. Be like, dude, it's just not, you're not ready for all of it. I personally don't think that those rumors are true. But if they are, then he has to be the adult in the room and be like, this is not the offense we need to run with you right now. Maybe next year. And we'll progress it as the year goes along. But with Hawkins, it just looks better. I don't think that, obviously, we don't have 2 different play callers within 5 games. It's the same guy. So whatever I'm kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt right now that it's going to look better with Hawkins. I don't know why that reason is, but it just has looked better. And hopefully as we get healthier on the offense as a whole, it continues to progress. I think his cap right now, I don't think he's going to recover enough where we're all going to be like, oh, this is going to be our offensive coordinator for the next 3 to 5 years, as long as he doesn't get a head coaching job somewhere else. I think he might be capped at like a C+ this year, just how bad everything's looked so far. And maybe it's not all on him, but he's definitely not helping himself with, as you mentioned, the lack of adjustments is just not helping with the personnel that he has. That the adjustments aren't there. Some boneheaded play calling sometimes, lack of execution, and Brent Venables has taken account for that. Like when a coach says like it's on us, like some of the execution that errors that are going on there, like we're just not preparing these guys. Then like do better at preparing the guys. And maybe he's just taking fault for it as the head coach because he's the head man and kind of putting it on the coaches to take some heat off the players. But there's some level of truth to it to an extent. And you got to figure something out. I think it's going to get better, but as of today, I'm going to go D because I have a feeling because it has looked better with Hawkins. If Jackson Arnold was still the quarterback, it could easily be an F because it's just so bad.
We've had 6 quarters of football now with Hawkins, and the offense has looked a lot better with him. I mean that's plain as day to see. I mean, I think that's a lot of reason why, down 21-10 in that Auburn game, with what we've seen from, unfortunately Arnold and stuff so far is, that's why I think you feel the game's over. And luckily it wasn't. I think Hawkins is a big reason for that.
Yep, definitely. And then that's everything. Do you want to add anything else? Because I think we did a pretty good job here.
Yeah, that was a fun video. I'm glad we didn't. The original plan, guys, was to do the whole team in one video, and I think that would have been an hour and a half long video at the rate we're going here. So I'm glad we're breaking it up. It's gonna be better to watch, better for us to talk about. But yeah, I think it's not the offense that we expected so far. Through 5 games. Again, I think they played a better game against Auburn. They played a better second half with Hawkins. So the last 6 quarters has been better. Still not great, but better. But there's something to look forward to, at least right now with Hawkins there. With obviously we just went to Auburn and won with 5 receivers out and without your starting running back, because I think Taylor Tatum is a starter now. So really, you're down 6 offensive starters there, and you went to Jordan Aaron, find a way to win, especially trailing late and make a big play there. So there's some things there that I think you can get excited about, but it's not the offense that we want, right now, and still got a whole season to make it right. And luckily, despite the offense, because I think overall, if you grade you put the whole puzzle together here, it's a D+ right now or something like that, it's not been good, but all that really matters is they're 4-1 with a great opportunity against Texas in 2 weeks.
I agree. This was a fun video. I'm glad we broke it up into offense and defense. We'll wrap it up now. Make sure to hit the comment section. Let us know what you think about this team as a whole. If you want to break it down by position groups like we did, if you want to break it down by player, just go all in on the offense. Give that a grade. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you agree or disagree, this is what sports are about. We want to have these conversations with each other and with you guys watching. So make sure to hit the comment section down below and like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, turn on the notification bell. Follow us on all social media. Everything is linked down below. We appreciate you all watching, and we'll see you next time.